My name is Michael Grayson. I'm 42 years old. For the last 17 years, I've run a modest antique restoration shop just a few blocks off the old port in Portland, Maine. It's not glamorous, but I love what I do. Bringing old things back to life, repairing the worn and weathered until they find purpose again. There's something deeply satisfying about working with your hands, about taking something broken and making it whole. My wife, Ashley, has never really understood the appeal. She says it's quiet work, which is her polite way of saying dull. And maybe it is compared to her life. Ashley thrives on motion, on lights, on applause. Even the quiet kind you get when a room full of donors nod their heads and pretend to listen. She's carved out a place in Portland's cultural scene over the past decade. Event coordinator, community liaison, sometimes even speaker. She was especially involved in the city's cultural committee. The annual gala was her crown jewel. I always supported it. Her late nights, weekend planning sessions, sudden schedule changes. I chalked it up to her passion for art, her dedication to the community. And to some extent, I was proud of her. You learn to live in separate rhythms, when one of you lives in the quiet and the other in the noise. I didn't attend the gala this year. I had a commission that ran long, a restoration of a hand-carved 18th century mantel clock for a retired judge. Ashley had said it was fine. I'd gone to the last 3 years, and she understood that deadlines were piling up. Still, part of me felt guilty for missing it. So on a rainy Sunday evening, while sipping a lukewarm beer and scrolling aimlessly on my phone, I found myself on a local photographer's blog. They had uploaded a full album from the gala, candid sh*ts of donors, artists, and city officials in suits and sequins. I figured I'd browse through, maybe find a good photo of Ashley to save, something to show her later and say, "You looked amazing in this." I wasn't prepared for what I found. The photo wasn't salacious. In fact, it was elegant in composition, one of those perfectly timed, ambient sh*ts professionals dream of. It captured Ashley seated on a velvet bench beneath the chandelier in the old Masonic Hall. She wore a deep Berg *NDY dress, one that hugged her figure but with a kind of regal restraint. Her makeup was light, her hair pinned up in soft curls, and her posture straight but relaxed. She looked beautiful, undeniably so, but it was the man sitting next to her that pulled the air from my lungs. He was angled toward her, legs slightly parted, one arm draped casually behind her on the bench, the other hand resting. Not on her shoulder, not behind her back, but directly on her thigh. Not high up, not obscene, but int** mate. Familiar, possessive even. He wore a navy suit with a subtle check pattern, an expensive watch, and the kind of smile that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. Ashley's gaze wasn't on the camera. It was angled slightly toward him. Her lips parted just enough to register amusement or affection. Her eyes. There was something in them I hadn't seen in years. That softness, that ease, the way people look when they forget they're being watched. I zoomed in on the photo. My heart started racing. Not from anger. Not yet. It was something else. Confusion. Shock? Fear? I'd never seen my wife look like that with anyone. And suddenly, I couldn't stop replaying the image in my head. The placement of his hand. The tilt of her body. The smile she gave him, the kind she used to give me in our early years, when our lives were simpler, when our kitchen smelled like burnt toast and paint thinner and everything felt possible. I sat there for at least an hour, going over the photo again and again like it might change. I even tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a weird angle. Maybe it was a split-second moment, something harmless that the camera just happened to catch. People act differently at formal events, I told myself. A little looser, a little performative. But that didn't explain the hand. Later that night, after Ashley got home and kicked off her heels by the front door like always, I brought it up. "Hey," I said, holding up my phone with the image open. "You look amazing in this photo. Who's the guy?" She didn't even blink. Walked past me into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of wine from the fridge. "Oh, him? That's Jordan. He's some donor from Boston. Owns half the waterfront or something. Big talker. I think he had too many cocktails, honestly." She poured herself a glass. No hesitation. No stammer. He was getting a little handsy, but I scolded him afterward. It was nothing. I smiled for the picture to avoid a scene. She chuckled to herself, then added, harmless optics. Politics of the room, you know? She never looked me in the eye while she said any of it. Just stared at her wine glass, twirled it between her fingers. Her voice was light, maybe even a little amused, but the timing was off. Like she had practiced the response. I nodded slowly and let it drop. Didn't press. Didn't argue. But something about that moment lodged deep in my chest, like a splinter under the skin, small but impossible to ignore. I'd lived with Ashley long enough to know when she was being honest. And more importantly, I knew what it looked like when she wasn't. That night, lying in bed beside her, I couldn't sleep. Her breathing was steady, peaceful. I stared at the ceiling, running through every conversation we'd had over the last few months. Her increasingly late nights, the new gym across town she mentioned in passing, the perfume I didn't recognize last week, the spa gift card I found in her coat pocket from a place 2 hours away. Individually, they were meaningless. But together, they began to resemble a puzzle I hadn't realized I was assembling. I wanted to believe her. I truly did. And maybe 5 years ago, I would have. But this time, something in my gut refused to settle. That photo, what it showed, what it hinted at, it had cracked something loose. And now, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop staring through the fracture. I tried to let it go. After that night, I told myself it was nothing. I really did. I buried the photo in a tucked-away album on my phone, muted the photographer's page so I wouldn't stumble on more, and forced myself to focus on my workshop, on the familiar things, the dependable things. Wood, varnish, brass hinges that squeaked in a way I could understand. But my brain had other plans. It's not like Ashley changed overnight. If anything, that was the most unsettling part. She was still herself, still organized, still charming, still remembering to restock my favorite coffee beans without being asked. But something had shifted under the surface. A slow recalibration I couldn't quite name. At first, it was small things. She switched gyms. Not a big deal, except she never said why. She used to go to a place just a few blocks from our house, the kind with dim lighting and eucalyptus towels and other overpriced nonsense. Then, one morning, she mentioned she'd joined a new studio across town, a boutique-style fitness place near the waterfront. That same waterfront where, incidentally, I remembered the donor from the photo having property. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was reaching. But it stuck with me. Then there was the credit card. We had one joint account and 2 personal ones. We never really monitored each other's spending. It was one of those things built on trust, and in 17 years there had never been a reason not to trust her. But one morning, while checking the shared statement to confirm a supply order from my workshop, I noticed a $483 charge to a high-end day spa. Not the usual one Ashley liked. This was newer, trendier, farther. When I asked her about it, she said, "Oh, that? Someone gave me a gift certificate from the committee. I just paid the difference." Seemed plausible. Except, that wasn't how she usually handled gifts. Ashley was proud when someone treated her. She'd have come home raving about it, describing every room, every robe, every cucumber-infused water like it was sacred. But this time, nothing. Just a vague excuse. No follow-up story. No photos. I let it slide. But the knot in my stomach was back. Over the next few weeks, I noticed other things. Things I wouldn't have registered if I hadn't been looking, things that would have seemed harmless before. She started wearing different perfume. Lighter, floral, unfamiliar. The bottle didn't show up on her dresser, it stayed tucked inside a zippered pouch in her handbag, which she now took everywhere. And I mean everywhere. She used to leave her purse hanging on the coat hook by the door, even overnight. Now it was always with her. Grocery store. Bathroom. Even just walking the trash out to the curb. Her phone? Same story. She began keeping it screened down at all times. Changed the lock screen. No longer a photo of the 2 of us on that road trip to Bar Harbor, but a generic ocean landscape. She never used to care if I picked it up to silence an alarm or read a text aloud. Now, if I so much as glanced in its direction, she'd shift it closer to herself. And then came the calendar. Ashley was a planner. She used color-coded Google invites and used to joke about how I was chronically analog. But lately, her schedule was all over the place. Meetings would appear and disappear without explanation. One night, she'd text at 6 p.m. to say she had an impromptu donor dinner. Would I mind fending for myself? Another time, she said she was driving upstate to visit her aunt, only to come home with 0 stories about the visit and no photos on her phone. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Every time I thought about asking directly, "Are you seeing someone?" the words felt foreign in my mouth, like saying them would shift our entire world on its axis, and I wasn't sure I could survive that. Instead, I started tracking details the way I track dents and fractures in antique desks. I kept a mental ledger, timestamps, receipts, patterns. Not out of malice, just survival. If I was wrong, I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. If I was right, I needed to know how far it went. One night, she came home glowing. That's the word that came to mind. Her cheeks flushed, lips glossed, smile lingering longer than usual. She walked through the front door humming a song I didn't recognize, kicked off her shoes, and dropped onto the couch like she'd had the best evening of her life. I asked, "Good night." She nodded. Reaching into her bag for a leftover chocolate truffle, she insisted I try. The committee meeting was actually kind of fun for once. I took the chocolate but couldn't taste it. I was too focused on the way she used the word meeting like a cover. It was starting to feel like every time she said that word, what she really meant was something else. Something she wouldn't say to my face. Another weekend, I suggested we go out. Just the two of us. Something simple. A brewery. Maybe the old bookstore she liked. Her eyes darted sideways. Then she shook her head gently. "Rain check? I'm just wiped." So I nodded. Said sure. Watched her head upstairs to take a long bath. An hour later, I passed by the bathroom to grab something from the linen closet. The water was running, but the door was cracked open a sliver. Just enough to hear her voice. Low. Whispering. She was on the phone. I didn't eavesdrop. I walked back downstairs and stared at the blank TV screen for 20 minutes. But her voice echoed in my head. Not the words, just the tone. The softness. The way people speak when they're trying not to be heard and trying to be close. Maybe none of this sounds definitive. Maybe, to someone else, it reads like insecurity. Paranoia. The mind of a man afraid he's no longer enough. I thought that too. There were nights I stood in the middle of our bedroom, watching Ashley brush her hair, wondering if I had imagined it all. If I had invented a story to explain something as simple as growing older, drifting apart. That maybe she wasn't hiding anything. That maybe I'd just become ordinary. But every time I tried to settle into that idea, something would betray it. Like the day I picked up her coat from the cleaners. Inside the pocket, folded neatly, was a receipt from a hotel bar 2 towns over. 2 cocktails, a shared appetizer, and one word at the bottom that sent a chill down my spine. Room charge. I didn't say a word. I put the receipt back, exactly where I found it. Like I hadn't seen it. Like I could keep pretending. But I couldn't. Not really. That night, when Ashley came home late again, I watched her from the porch as she stepped out of her car and adjusted her hair in the side mirror. Her dress was snug, elegant, new. She glanced at her reflection like someone rehearsing a role. And I realized I didn't know her anymore. Or maybe I did, and that was the real tragedy. Not that she was changing, but that she already had. And she wasn't coming back. The day it all came crashing down wasn't stormy or dramatic like in movies. It was clear, breezy. One of those crisp coastal afternoons in early spring when the ocean breeze cuts just enough to keep you in a light jacket, and the sunlight dances through bare tree branches. There was nothing about it that screamed, "This is the moment your life changes." That's what made it so cruel. I had wrapped up a restoration job for a local innkeeper, a mahogany hutch with hand-carved lion feet and sun-faded varnish. It had taken longer than expected. Not because of the work itself, but because my concentration was sh*t. I kept sanding too far, mixing the wrong finish, forgetting which drawer came from which slot. My hands were working, but my mind, it was just noise. Constant, buzzing noise. I finished ahead of schedule for once. It was barely 4 p.m. Ashley had mentioned she'd be at a gallery planning session and wouldn't be home until 7. That was the plan. But I wasn't looking to catch her. I swear I wasn't. I wasn't even planning to come home yet. I just drove. By habit more than intention, I pulled into our driveway. I sat in the car for a while, staring at the front door. The blinds were open. The porch empty. Nothing seemed out of place. I thought maybe I'd water the plants, maybe make dinner for once. Something small to take my mind off the heaviness that had taken up permanent residence in my chest. Then I opened the front door. It was quiet, eerily so. Not the kind of quiet you get when no one's home. The kind you feel when someone's trying not to be heard. I walked in slowly, listening. The first thing I noticed was the faint sound of music. Jazz. Miles Davis, maybe. Not the kind of music Ashley usually played. She leaned more toward indie folk piano covers. This was low, moody, deliberate. And then I heard it. The sound of water running upstairs. Our master bath. For a second, I froze. Everything in me went still. My mind immediately told me to leave. Walk back out the door. Pretend you forgot something at the shop. Anything. But I didn't move. I walked softly, past the dining room, past the stairwell, until I stood at the base of the stairs. Every creak in the hardwood sounded like a G***NSH**T. I climbed one step, then another, then another. The bathroom door was cracked open, barely. Just enough to see a sliver of light and movement inside. Ashley was sitting on the edge of the built-in bench we'd installed years ago, wrapped in her robe. Her legs were crossed. A half-finished glass of white wine rested on the counter beside her. She was smiling, no laughing. A soft, quiet laugh I hadn't heard in a long time. The kind you don't fake. And then I saw him. The same man from the gala photo. Same beard. Same posture. This time, no suit. He wore a white button-down shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked like he belonged there, like this was routine. He was sitting across from her on the tiled ledge beside the tub, glass in hand, speaking softly. I couldn't make out the words. I didn't need to. I stood there, completely still, watching. The image burned itself into my brain. Not because of what they were doing. There was no physical contact in that moment. No kissing. No telltale undressing. But it was the ease between them. The comfort. The way Ashley leaned forward slightly, legs still crossed, like they were mid-conversation at a private lounge. The int asterisk Macy wasn't S asterisk Zool. It was familiar. That's what gutted me. It wasn't new. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 30 seconds. Could have been 10 minutes. Eventually, I turned away. I didn't storm in. Didn't yell. Didn't demand answers or throw accusations. I walked back down the stairs the same way I came, quietly, deliberately, without leaving a trace. In the bedroom, I retrieved the envelope from my desk drawer. It wasn't premeditated, but I had started collecting things over the past few weeks, just in case. Printouts of the credit card statements. **TS of her texts where her location didn't match what she claimed. Photos of the receipt from the hotel bar. And the gala photo, the one that started it all. And on top of the stack, divorce papers. Signed. Dated. No letter. No explanation. Just the truth in ink and documentation. I placed the envelope in the center of our bed. Right on the neatly arranged duvet she always folded like a hotel maid. Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even close it fully behind me. The breeze caught it, and I let it stay ajar as I walked down the steps and got into my truck. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I ended up by the harbor. There's a spot by the old docks where the benches are worn smooth from weather and time. I sat there until the sun dipped below the waterline, letting the cold wind bite at my face. No one called me right away. No frantic text. No voicemail begging for understanding. And that silence told me more than any confrontation ever could. Hours passed. I drove to the small rental I'd been eyeing for weeks. It was just outside the city, perched on a bluff overlooking the ocean. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. Peeling paint. But it was mine. I signed the lease the next morning. When I returned to the house the following day, just long enough to collect my tools and some clothes, Ashley wasn't home. But the envelope was gone. Not a trace left. She hadn't tried to call. Not yet. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. The first morning I woke up in the rental, I wasn't sure where I was. The place smelled like salt and old wood. The mattress was stiff. My neck ached. I'd passed out fully clothed on top of the covers, boots still on. For a second, I thought maybe I'd dreamed the whole thing, the envelope, the bath, the wine, the man. But the silence said otherwise. Ashley hadn't called me that night. But by morning, the calls started. The first one came just after 8 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Then another call. This time, she left one. I didn't listen. Then a text. Michael, please. I don't know what's going on. Can we talk? I read it once and put the phone face down on the windowsill. The rental's windows overlooked the coast, where the sea moved like a slow inhale and exhale. Everything here was quiet, and for the first time in weeks my head was too. But silence doesn't mean peace. That day my phone rang 17 times. I counted. Each time her name lit up the screen. Something tightened in my chest, then loosened, like my body was bracing for a confrontation that never came. Around lunchtime, the voicemails started changing tone. From confused to hurt. From hurt to angry. She didn't scream. Ashley's never been the screaming type, but her voice hardened. You left. Just walked out. After everything we've built. After 17 years. She said I owed her a conversation. Closure. She said she was worried about me. That I'd been acting strange for a while. I ignored her. But I wasn't immune. I wasn't some stoic warrior calmly detaching from heartbreak. I cried. I laughed bitterly at things that weren't funny. I yelled at a coffee pot that wouldn't start. I stood by the window for hours, not watching the ocean, just existing. Then came the second wave. The narrative shift. A mutual friend, Lauren, called me. Lauren and I weren't close, but she'd always been kind. She said she'd heard I wasn't doing well. That Ashley told her I'd left unexpectedly. That I'd been having a tough time mentally, maybe burned out, maybe midlife stuff. The words she used were gentle, but I could feel the undertone. Like she was trying to fish for the real story without accusing me outright. I listened, said little, then thanked her for the call. The phone didn't stop after that. Ashley's story was spreading. I was unstable. I was overwhelmed. I had snapped. No mention of the man in the bathroom. No mention of her hiding things from me for months. According to her, I was unraveling. I'd abandoned her without cause. It stung more than I expected. Not the lies. The ease of them. How quickly she rewrote the story to paint herself as the concerned, blindsided wife. But I didn't correct her. Not directly. I didn't post anything online. I didn't send mass texts or air dirty laundry in group chats. I didn't want a war. I wanted truth. And peace. If I couldn't have both, I'd settle for the latter. But some people didn't buy her version. About a week after I moved out, I got a call from Derek, an old friend from my workshop days who'd attended a few of the galas with his wife. He asked to grab a beer. No pressure. Just to catch up. I agreed. We met at a small bar near the marina, one that smelled like wet rope and fried food. It wasn't glamorous, which is probably why I liked it. Derek didn't ask me about the marriage directly. He just talked. About his boat. His daughter applying to college. Then, in the middle of his second beer, he looked at me and said, "You don't owe anyone an explanation. But just so you know, not everyone's buying the story she's telling." I nodded. Didn't say anything at first. Then I said, "You ever look at someone and realize they've been fading for a long time and you just didn't want to see it?" He nodded slowly. Yeah. I didn't need to say more. He didn't ask. After that, I started seeing things more clearly. Not just about Ashley, but about me. I realized how long I'd been trying to keep something alive that had already stopped breathing. I'd chalked up every lie to stress. Every distance to exhaustion. Every red flag to love. Love doesn't look like secrecy. It doesn't move in shadows. It doesn't retreat every time you get close. Around the same time, Ashley sent a long email. No subject line. Just a wall of text. It started with, "I'm sorry if you felt like I betrayed you." Not, "I'm sorry I betrayed you." If you felt like. The kind of phrasing that sounds like an apology but isn't. She went on about the pressures of her work. About feeling neglected. About how I never wanted to come to events anymore and how she needed connection. She never once named the man from the photo. Never addressed what I saw in the bathroom. She ended the email with, "I still love you. I believe we can fix this, but I need you to be open to healing. For both of us." I didn't respond. Because here's the thing, I had been open. For months. I'd stayed silent, waited, given the benefit of every doubt. I'd stared at empty chairs across from me at dinner. I'd made coffee for someone who left lipstick-stained mugs on counters but couldn't look me in the eye. I'd done the waiting. The wondering. The blaming myself. Healing doesn't happen where the wounds are still being made. I focused on the rental. I fixed the creaky step on the back porch. painted the living room a color that had nothing to do with her preferences. I bought mismatched plates and bowls from thrift shops not because I had to, but because I could. I played music loudly while working. Left socks on the floor without worrying they'd be picked up or silently judged. I went to the harbor most evenings. Sometimes I'd just sit and watch the tide come in. Other times I brought a thermos of coffee and tried to sketch again, a hobby I dropped years ago. My lines were crooked. My hands too stiff. But it didn't matter. One night, about a month after I left, I got another call from someone I didn't expect. Her name was Tasha, an acquaintance from the committee. She worked under Ashley helping with vendors and logistics. We weren't close. Barely exchanged more than pleasantries before. She didn't call to gossip. She called because, as she put it, I thought you should know. Apparently, Ashley had started backpedaling, saying the divorce was a temporary separation, that we were working things out privately. She told people I was still hurt but softening, that we were taking time to rebuild trust. None of that was true. Tasha didn't offer opinions. She just laid out the facts. And I thanked her. After I hung up, I sat on the porch with the phone in my lap, watching fog roll in over the water. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just exhaled. Slow. Measured. Like I'd been holding it in for too long. Ashley was rewriting the story again. But I had stepped out of the script. I wasn't the villain. Or the broken husband. Or the temporary obstacle to her next chapter. I was gone. Not to punish her. Just to save myself. When you leave someone like Ashley, someone polished, persuasive, socially fluent, you don't just walk away from a person. You walk away from a performance. And the moment you exit stage left, they begin rewriting the script without you. It started with a trickle. A former client of mine, Nancy, from the Historical Society, emailed me asking if I was feeling better. I blinked at the message, reread it twice, and sat with it for a full minute before realizing what it implied. I hadn't told Nancy anything. She wasn't part of our close circle. She didn't even know Ashley well. But somehow she knew I'd not been well. That I'd disappeared for personal reasons. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to respond to a version of my life I didn't recognize. Later that week, I stopped by a supply store for linseed oil, and one of the clerks, someone I'd spoken to half a dozen times over the years, said, "Hey man, heard you and your wife are figuring things out. That's tough. Hope it all works out." I didn't correct him. Just nodded. Paid. Walked out. By the time the third concerned call came in, I knew what was happening. Ashley wasn't telling people the truth. She wasn't even telling half of it. She was doing something worse, offering a version that positioned her as the hurt but hopeful wife. Concerned. Loyal. Waiting for her troubled husband to come back to his senses. She had turned my exit into a narrative of retreat. Breakdown. Even delusion. It was subtle. Masterful, honestly. The kind of manipulation you don't see coming unless you're looking straight at it. I saw it clearly. And still, I didn't bite. One of our mutual friends, Josh, called under the guise of checking in. He and I had shared beers over bonfires, swapped tools, worked on a busted deck together. He opened with, "Ashley's really worried about you, man. Said you've been pulling away from everyone." I told him calmly I left because I caught her with another man. You can believe whatever you want, but that's the truth. He went quiet. Long pause. Then said, "I didn't know that." She didn't say that. Yeah, I replied. She didn't. That call was a turning point. Not because it vindicated me, but because it reminded me how fragile perception can be when one person controls the story. And how hard it is to reclaim the truth without shouting. But I refused to shout. I wasn't going to turn this into a drama. I wasn't going to match her energy with spectacle. Instead, I moved through the world quietly, deliberately, and with facts. When another of my old clients, Ellen, a retired art teacher, called asking if I'd taken time off for mental clarity, I met her for coffee. Not to defend myself. Not to bash Ashley. I brought a manila folder. Inside, the printed credit card statements. The photo. The hotel receipt. And a copy of the signed divorce petition with my name at the bottom. I slid it across the table. Said nothing. Ellen read silently. Then looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm so sorry." I nodded. I don't need sympathy. Just understanding. From there, the silence shifted. Not in volume, but in direction. Ashley stopped being asked about me in public. I stopped getting second-hand pity. Her version lost oxygen. Not through confrontation. Through exposure. But still, she kept trying. She reached out to our friends. To former colleagues of mine. Even to a few vendors from my workshop. I got word through the grapevine that she'd asked people to check in on Michael. She was painting a picture, the absent, emotionally distant husband who had possibly fallen into depression, who had misunderstood an innocent friendship, who had acted rashly. She never mentioned the wine glass, the robe, the hand on her thigh, or the weeks of gaslighting that preceded it. And still, I didn't respond publicly, because I knew something she didn't. A story built on lies needs an audience to survive. But the truth only needs time. Around the period, I received a call from one of her committee partners, Laura. We'd barely spoken before. She asked if I was available to meet. Said she had something she thought I should hear. Reluctantly, I agreed. We met at a park halfway between our neighborhoods. She sat on the bench beside me, tense, hands fidgeting with a paper coffee cup. She didn't sugarcoat. I overheard Ashley and Jordan, he's the guy from the gala, arguing outside the gallery last week. I said nothing. She told him she didn't expect things to fall apart so fast. That she thought she had more time before Michael made it public. Then he said, I told you he'd find out eventually. And she told him to stop calling. Said he was making things worse. She paused. I don't know what you saw, but I heard enough to know you weren't imagining it. I thanked her. Then I walked away. That night, Ashley texted me again. The tone had shifted. No longer performative. No longer frantic. Just this. I wish I could take it all back. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. But there's a difference between regret and remorse. Regret is wanting to undo the consequences. Remorse is wishing you hadn't done it at all. And I'd come to understand she wasn't sorry for what she did, she was sorry she lost control of the narrative. In the weeks that followed, things got quieter. Calls slowed. Mutual friends stopped checking in. The world moved on as it always does. But the shift was palpable. Ashley had spent weeks trying to rewrite the story. And now she was losing the room. The final twist came in the form of my daughter. She was home from college. 21. Smart. Independent. Thoughtful in ways I couldn't take full credit for. She had been quiet about the separation, respectful but distant. Until one evening she came to the rental. Knocked softly. Stood in the doorway with a printed photo in her hand. The gala photo. I found this weeks ago, she said. Before you even moved out. I didn't know how to ask. But I figured it out. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just opened the door and let her in. We didn't talk much. Just sat in silence as the sun set through the salt-smeared windows. Eventually, she said, you don't have to explain. I just wanted you to know I get it. And I'm here. That was the first time in months I felt something resembling peace. Not because everything was healed, but because I no longer felt alone in the reality I'd been carrying. Ashley had tried to rewrite the past, but the past had already happened. And now I was done being a character in her version of it. It didn't unravel with a bang. It unraveled like a slow leak, quiet, steady, inevitable. The man from the gala, Jordan, vanished. Not literally, but socially. Gone from Ashley's circles. No more appearances at fundraisers. His name scrubbed from committee rosters, sponsorship lists, even the online photo albums that once proudly included him. It was Laura who told me first. They're pretending he never existed, she said. Ashley deleted all the posts that tagged him. Told the board he stepped away due to personal issues. The irony was sharp. She had painted me as unstable, and now here she was, erasing the very man she'd risked everything for. I didn't say a word. But others started to. A couple from the committee reached out, people who'd initially kept their distance. They didn't apologize directly, but the tone was different. They were sorry to hear what happened. They hoped I was doing okay. You could feel the shift, doubt had crept in. And once it does, it spreads. Ashley didn't contact me for a while after that. Maybe she knew the walls were closing in on her version of events. Maybe she was finally sitting with the reality she had built and broken. Or maybe she was planning her next move. Because when I got the call from my son, I knew the story wasn't over yet. She called them. Both of them. My daughter, home from college. My son, who was working construction upstate. She reached out to each of them, asking them to come see me. Said I needed help. That I was struggling. That I wasn't well. She didn't know they'd already seen the truth. My daughter had seen the photo. My son had looked up the court docket online, saw my name on the divorce filings, and put the pieces together himself. Neither of them believed her story. Not this time. They came anyway, but not to her. They came to me. That weekend, we sat on the porch watching the tide roll in. None of us brought up her name. We didn't have to. The silence said everything. It was the kind of silence that felt whole, not hollow. They didn't press me for details. They didn't try to fix anything. They were just there. In that moment, I realized that this was the ending Ashley never anticipated. She thought she'd control the fallout. that I'd go quietly, that the people closest to me would take her word as gospel. But instead, she lost the very thing she thought she could keep: respect, trust, family. And I didn't seek revenge. I didn't need to. I finalized the divorce, transferred my business assets, secured my finances, left behind the house we once shared, the friends who couldn't pick a side, the story she tried so hard to sell. I wake up now to the sound of gulls and ocean wind. My coffee tastes better out here. My hands, once shaky with doubt, are steady again, restoring not just antiques, but something inside me I thought I'd lost. She thought she deserved more. She thought she could rewrite the ending. But I gave her exactly what she asked for. And I left her with the one thing she never expected to lose: me, for good.